The Ghost of the Yellow Dog got him about 3 weeks ago. The piano lesson is based on a play by August Wilson, who did Fences and others. May he rest in peace. Check out his IMDb page for the full list of his work. And this was written and directed by Malcolm Washington, with writing also done by Virgil Williams, who's done Criminal Minds and Mudbound, and features one hell of a loaded cast. And I don't mean as far as name, I mean as far as talent. If there is one strength to this goddamn movie, it's the fucking performances. You have Samuel L. Jackson as Doker, not Doken, into the fire! Into the fire! Even though there is a fire in this movie. You also have Joy David Washington, who plays Boy Willie. I'm just saying the names here, by the way. This does take place in 1936, just so you know, as far as the tone of the movie and everything. It does touch on racism and obviously the stuff that black people have to deal with, dealt with then, and still deal with now. It's fucking bullshit that anybody with a different skin tone would have to deal with anything. It's like, we're all humans, we're all in this together. But anyway, Danielle Deadweiler, who was in Till. I need to rewatch that, by the way, at some point. I do remember watching it, and the performance was making me very, very inspired, but also very angry because of the story. And she was also in Parallel, which wasn't very good. She plays Bernice. And then you have Ray Fisher, who plays Lyman. It's like Lenny of Mice and Men. I mean, the character. And Corey Hawkins, who plays Avery, a man of cloth that really doesn't have a lot of faith. And also Michael Potts, who is terrific. He plays Whining Boy. So, basically, we follow the Charles family in the Great Depression. They seem to be doing well in Pittsburgh, but there's also this thing involving a family heirloom, a piano. A piano with a past. A past that we find out more about as the film goes on. So, I do want to say, as far as the strengths of this movie, the performances, the dialogue, some tremendous fucking acting. I don't mean chewing scenery in a bad way or a comical way. There's some great goddamn acting here. A lot of the story is cliched and simple. I mean, there's a few complex things beneath, don't get me wrong, but a lot of this story follows beats that you have seen in other plays, in other movies, but the performances really are what strengthen this whole thing. There are a few moments that I think could have been trimmed. I don't know if this needed to be nearly 2 hours, when I think about 1 hour and 50 minutes probably would have been just fine. You could have trimmed a good 10 to 15 minutes, just made a few little cuts, maybe not done some slow-mo a couple times. But that being said, it has a nice beginning on July 4th in 1911 in Mississippi. We find out how the piano got to the Charles' family's place. And what I like is that it's told in a beautiful way, even with the simplistic and sometimes cliched nature of the whole thing. Danielle does absolutely great here. And even though she was good in Parallel, in all honesty, wasn't playing to her strengths and was kind of eh. But she was great in Till, and she's a tremendous actress. Samuel L. Jackson, kind of low-key here, has a few sparks or whatever. Joy David Washington, as annoying as he is, you can see why he feels the way he does, the character, I mean. There's just a lot of really good shit, or a lot of really good. Michael Potts was just absolutely great as well. As a man that has made money, but also kind of faces his own mortality and also feels like his family has kind of, not necessarily abandoned him, but like there's family strife and everything. And there's a lot of good stuff. Also, it is pretty much like a one or two location shoot. I mean, outside of like the beginning where they're outside after getting the piano. And we have like one part where Lyman and Boy Willie go to a dance club, so to speak. We don't really see them, like, you know, leave the house that often. I mean, we see them leave the house. We don't see that many exterior shots. The ones we see, it's like, oh, okay, cool. But often it's just about this house. We get to know the architecture. We get to recognize corners and everything. We get to recognize the stuff. And there's this looming presence and everything all around that piano. So I'm going to get into spoilers because there's some stuff to spoil and talk about here. It's on Netflix if you want to check it out. Terrific performances definitely elevate this above what would have been a standard story. Anyway, 3, 2, 1, and spoilers. So, yes, July 4th, 1911 in Mississippi. The lighting, as far as, like, you know, the fireworks and everything, and the light and the fireworks going off as they're stealing this piano. We find out why they stole this piano. And then we see a shack getting burned down because Seth Pheasant Rollins has something to do with it. That's a wrestling reference for those of you that are confused. Now, 1936, these are scary times. Then they show Heinz' truck. These are scary Heinz. Har har. A truck full of watermelons for Boy Willie and Lyman to sell. Their words, not mine. They're going to do that because Boy Willie has this idea. He wants to make sure that he can do certain things, earn enough money, sell some watermelon, do another thing, and he needs to get a hold of that family heirloom, that piano, because there is a man named Sutter who got clipped by the ghost of Yellow Dog, fell down into his well, and we find out how Sutter ties into this family a little bit later. And now the idea is somebody wants to sell off his land, and Boy Willie has a chance to do that. We also find out that he has a bit of a past as far as his dad working hard, for his money, having these, just having big, strong hands that can, help grow crops and stuff like that. We see that, a little bit of that, where they're talking about sunflower fields or whatever it is. And then we find out about a guy named Crawley that actually was a friend of Lyman and Boy Willie, who ended up dying, and Crawley was actually, pretty close to Bernice, shall we say. Also, she has a daughter. I didn't write the young lady's name down, but the daughter was quite good as well. She wasn't given a bunch to do, but she did a good job. And there's this boogie-woogie thing on the piano where they're playing this and doing all this stuff. And it's a nice bonding moment between Boy Willie and Marantha. Marantha, I think, is what the girl's name is. I'm sorry, I didn't write that down. There was a lot of stuff going on. And Avery is a man that feels that Bernice would be good for him. He's a man of cloth, but he wants to work hard, wants to help her out. I did like how Whining Boy, they introduced him. He was drinking, but he was also talking about, he did something where he sold Lyman a suit, and Lyman was going to go off and, go off and, get a woman. But before that, we find out about, Crawley was somebody that was shot while there was, a wood deal going on. And Lyman actually was shot. And, Crawley was actually killed. Lyman was shot. And there's this great part where they're doing, oh Lord, or oh Lord Gal, and they're stomping, and it's just great soul music. There's a lot of great fucking music here. That's a part I actually had to watch a couple times. And I may actually go back and rewatch that again, unless that clip's on YouTube. That's a really good part. You have Samuel Jackson, got Michael Potts, got everybody doing that stuff. It's great. They're stomping their feet. You can feel the energy through your goddamn television. And then there's this talk about farm working. That was basically slave labor. They were down in the South. Whining Boy used to play piano, but he gave it up because he said you lug the piano around with you, and at first you have the whiskey, you have the women, you have all this stuff, but then eventually it wears down on you. It beats you up. And I wrote down 40 minutes in, this is fabulous. Again, there are issues with it, but as far as the acting, it is so fucking good. So Sutter's grandfather used to actually own the Charles family, and the Charles family got separated. You had the grandfather, and you had the father, and you basically had this whole thing, and you got to see, hear from Samuel Jackson Doker what he got to see, what he had to see, what he's had to deal with. The piano basically got stolen, by the way, because the grandfather carved a bunch of stuff family faces and family memories into the carvings of the piano. Beautiful carvings, by the way. But the piano was stolen. Boy Willie was 6. And there was a guy named Charles. He got basically, yeah, he tried to stay behind and maybe stop Sutter's grandfather. And then he caught a train, and then they burned the train car along with him and a whole bunch of others that were in there. There's also a certain slur said in this that I'm not going to say because I'm white, and it's not cool to say anyway, but I'm definitely not going to say it. But we see some memories with Boy Willie talking to his father. Land will do that to you, son. Whole bunch of really, really good, dialogue pieces and flashbacks. Danielle is fabulous, as I wrote down. And she has this one, I mean, she has multiple great parts or great scenes in this, but she talks about all the violence and the thieving, and just leads more violence and thieving, and just this amping. It's beautifully told. Again, had the acting been a little hammy, or had the acting not been as good, the grade I'm going to give it would be a lot lower. But, yeah, basically the idea is that, there's this talk about Crawley, what happened, why in the world he ended up getting killed. It's because he had a gun, and, naturally, all this weird stuff's going on, these memories, this emotion, because Boy Willie wants to take the piano and sell it. But meanwhile, Bernice and then her daughter are seeing the ghost of Sutter, because he's tied to the piano, because there's a tie there. Because I'm not saying, by the way, he was a good person. I'm not saying the grandfather was a good person, but the idea is you bring the hate with you, and because you stole that, now that specter is looming over. And if you sell it off, you probably could get rid of it. Avery tries to make a play to say, hey, I want to take care of you, Bernice. Bernice doesn't necessarily want to do that, but she says, if you are willing to bless this house and get rid of the specter, I would really appreciate it. And, Sutter will go away, do that. So the idea is Avery is going to do this stuff. And see, Sutter fell down the well, and we don't know why. We don't know if somebody did that in a land deal. We don't know what's going on. We just know he fell down the goddamn well. Maybe he was a drunk fuck. But Bernice, basically, she had talked about how she would not lay her hands on the piano because she only played it for her mom. Her mom made her obsessively play it and stuff like that. And it turns out this piano has this tie to, maybe invoking ghosts from the past, because then we get to the conclusion of this whole thing. But there was a scene with Lyman where he was drunk coming back from something, from partying, along with Boy Willie, but he was out with a woman. And the way Lyman was, talking to Bernice and kind of getting close to her and putting perfume on her and stuff like that, I thought we were going to get something really, really violent and really assaulty. Thankfully, we did not. A little bit worried there. It's a very uncomfortable scene. But, she just wasn't ready to do anything, even though there was a brief kiss. It started out as a kiss. How did it end up like this? But then it turns out more and more shit's going on. Sutter's ghost is hanging around. And we get more arguing, essentially, between brother and sister, Boy Willie and Bernice. And Avery's going to show up and bless this house. I'm skipping over quite a bit of stuff because I encourage you guys to actually check this out. I'm just giving an overview of the spoilers. But the idea is he's going to bless this house. Don't let the candle go out. Let's get this water. Let's do this thing. Well, let's just say that goes absolutely tits up, because Avery isn't an exorcist or that good of a priest or pastor or preacher or whatever. And things are going absolutely south. Also, Sutter's ghost has Boy Willie up and is just choking him and then la 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 la. Meanwhile, the daughter is locked away. This kind of reminds me of the end of The Deliverance, except without Glenn Close's questionable dialogue. And while this one was really good, The Deliverance was absolute dog shit. But yeah, the ghost basically is around there, and then finally Bernice sits down at the piano, plays the piano and everything. I call upon you to help me. I want you to help me. I call upon you, all this stuff. And all this crazy shit's going on. All this bad shit's happening. But then suddenly that's it. That's it. We're done. We are done. This house is cleansed. Though, Boy Willie says to her, don't you or your daughter stop playing that, or otherwise, me or Sutter may come back. Or me and Sutter may come back. And yeah, he's dead. He can go off and have his land in the big old, farmland in the sky, I guess. That's kind of sad. That's really sad. At least that's the implication that he died, I believe. I mean, I believe that's what he said. Considering he said me and Sutter, so why the hell else would he say that Sutter didn't come back? So we finish up with some good music by Frank Ocean. Really good soundtrack here, by the way. And as mother and daughter are playing, we do the boogie woogie thing, and that is it. So that is the end of the piano lesson. What a lesson it was. Was it sad? Yes. Was it cliched at times? Yes. Was the action tremendous? Absolutely. A- is what it received. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description, and Letterboxd and Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Ritlin, and I will see you soon.